Member Connect. And if you are signed up for CPDUs through Member Connect, but you're attending as a group, then all we ask is at the end of each session, you have a confirmation of who attended that session and send that to training@oacbdd.org. And we can put that in the chat for you all to see. The CPDU should be available in 24 to 48 hours. Just a moment about the first session is divided into two parts. This first part, 10 to 10:30, is our celebration and our special guests. So we're excited for you to be here during that time. And then at 10, starting a little bit before 10:30, we'll start with our first session with Marilyn S.B. Sherwin. So that being said, I am very proud to present Bridget Gargan, Chief Executive Officer of OACB. Bridget.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. It's wonderful to see everybody. I so wish we were in person, but that's not possible right now. So we are here indeed to celebrate early intervention, but from OACB's perspective, we are here to celebrate each and every one of you participating in this today. We are here to celebrate the absolute amazing strength and resilience that you have shown out throughout the pandemic and your ongoing commitment to early intervention services and making life better for people and their families. I feel so fortunate to work with such a group of talented people. I would like to acknowledge Susan Jones, Beth Poppich, and their counterpart, Bev Smith, for their lifelong commitment to children's services and early intervention services and advancing them in Ohio. In my experience, when the chips are down, if I talk to the early intervention ladies, I always get a boost and a lift up. Carrie Beyer, the superintendent in Erie County, has been an absolute champion for early intervention services in this state and has done so much to make sure that superintendents in the state are connected to the vital information and the ongoing changes in the evolution of the work that all of you do in the field every day. So we are here to celebrate early intervention services, but if we were in person, I would be asking all of you to stand so we could give you a resounding round of applause for your commitment to this field. One of the things I respect and admire most about early intervention is the commitment to continuous improvement. There is never a time when I have seen anything about early intervention rest on any laurels. It's always, what can we do better? How can we inform families? How can we keep families involved? I personally have met many families who have been touched by early intervention services. I've met families that have had early intervention services and lifelong commitments with their county boards. And I've met families who have become county board champions forevermore because their 2-year-old received speech therapy and never needed to interface with the board again. So thank you all for everything you do to make Ohio a better place for families. At this time, I would like to introduce Director Jeff Davis. If you have not met Jeff, he is assumed the role of Director of the Department of DD after a long career in this field. If you haven't met Jeff, he's about one of the most approachable people you will ever meet, and I am thrilled that he can join with us today to celebrate with us. Director?
Director Davis is running just a little bit behind. If Diane Fox or Nathan Didino, could you please say a few words before he joins?
Yes, absolutely. Diane, should we talk about 5 things that that we've all learned during the pandemic? What do you think?
Well, sure. Let's start it off in DODD style. So 5 things you need to know about providing EI services during the pandemic?
Well, I'll start with number 5, and hopefully you guys have seen some of these. I guess we should preface this. Hopefully you've seen some of the 5 things videos that DoDD Communications has done over the last couple of years. There was I heard an Oscar-winning performance by Diane Fox and Nathan Didino, who did
Yes.
one on early intervention eligibility. We didn't ultimately win, but we were finalists in this genre of EI videos. But so we'll start here with 5 things. Number 5 is, we talk a lot about providing services in natural environments, and during the pandemic, I think we've learned we can take that a step farther, and it can be EI services provided in your natural environment. So maybe speech therapy is coming to a family live from your dining room table, your den, or depending on how the internet is, maybe direct from your basement.
Number 4, break some rules. Learn that sometimes we have to do the wrong thing for the right reasons.
The third thing that we learned about providing EI services during the pandemic is just when you didn't think that there were enough acronyms and technical jargon in early intervention, we decided to add some more. So Zoom, Skype, Teams, Doxy, DSL, DHL, I don't know.
And number 2, we added a new discipline to our core team, IT. But most importantly,
the number one thing that we learned about providing EI services during the pandemic is that EI services are important all of the time. And through the commitment that all of you on this webinar showed over the last year and a half, just in the last state fiscal year, you supported almost 23,000 children throughout the state. And we know what a positive influence that you've had on those families.
so thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Nathan and Diane.
Welcome.
Susan, is Director Davis joining us yet? B?
He has not joined yet, so I would say maybe let's start the video and and then we can resume a little bit later. So.
Okay.
So I'm going to take advantage of this to say one more thing. I was trying to stick to the time commitment.
Absolutely.
I'm standing on a step stool, but a little too much information there. But I did want to just also share with all of you that your pioneering work in early intervention and in terms of services in the home, I believe is going to become a model, is something we look to as we struggle with this provider workforce shortage. And there's just a lot more talk about trainings in the home and bringing things to the home level. So I think that I want you all to know that a lot of work you have done, I believe, will help to transform our system in the years to come. And I also believe through the course of the pandemic, I loved your list, but we have all learned that we can do hard things. And what I want you to know most of all is that OECB, we work for you and we are here to support you. So thank you and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Bridget. And Susan, I say take it away.
Okay, here we go.
Director Davis, welcome. Bridget has introduced you, and then we got to watch the video. And we're hoping that you got to see some of the video.
I did.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
First of all, you have my apologies, but it is so very nice to be with you. And I also wish we were in person. It sort of lends itself to all that you have done, all of you on the phone, and how you've adapted over the past year. You know this, the past 2 years now, when we think about it almost, and how you've sort of had to recreate in times of emergency, and still staying in touch, and perhaps now getting back to what is most important, and that's hands-on touch and really the better things of our system, where we can be with people, and that human aspect of our system. And I can't say enough, but I want to say it to you because you have to know it. And that is what you do every day continually amazes me. And it's true that I probably spent more of my time professionally in the adult part of our system. But the more I get to experience what you do and see it in the chances where I get to be with you and how you impact families, I'm just reinforcing for you what I hope intuitively and intrinsically that you fundamentally make a difference. And that difference is definable in so many ways. And so, what means the most to me is human beings and how we interact with them and how we show them our love for them. And you get to be the first ones to do that. And you do it so very well as an example for everybody else as lives move forward. So yeah, welcome you to this, but really this was my opportunity to say, as gratefully as I can, how much I appreciate what you do and the continuing improvements that you make and the commitment that you have and the passion. And of course, the love is the most important. So thank you so very much.
Okay, thank you, Director Davis. Susan, you want to introduce the next act?
Yes, and first I would like to thank everyone for contributing the photographs for the video. We had such a great time working on that, putting it together. We have thank yous to all of you, as well as thank you to Janice Stanfield, who gave us permission to use her song. And Shane Fannin, who was our tech person who put all of that together for us and gave us that finished product, which we will be happy to share after. And I know Bev and I have watched it several times now, and we are using our tissues every time we watch it. So thank you. And we all have so much to be proud of and grateful for. Okay, so on we go. I would like to introduce Marilyn Espy-Sherwint with our first session, Improvement Science. Can we do this even better? And Marilyn, I invite you. Oh, there you are. Get your camera on. And Marilyn is with us today on behalf of being a consultant with Project Trees, tools and resources to engage, empower, and support the families in early intervention in Ohio. So Marilyn, with that, I'm going to take it away.
Thanks, Susan. And I want to say, yes, I had a Kleenex handy watching that video too. I thought you guys did a wonderful job. Just to see the creativity, making it even better during the pandemic. So, and before we get started, I want to thank everybody on the call today for kind of being part of the great things that have happened. I recognized a lot of the names as people are signing on. And I especially want to thank, before we get started, our Trees teams that have been part of our journey together for the last 5 years. So in some way, and I'll look at Susan, this is a celebration as we close out our 5 years of Project Trees. with our funding, thanks to the Developmental Disabilities Planning Council, and then OACB as our fiscal agent. And so I want to thank Susan and Ronnie Boyer and Janet Stratner because we have had great fun, great learnings. And as we made this journey alongside of several teams throughout Ohio, and really today we're going to celebrate their work. But those of you who know me, either through ADAP or COACT way back when or whatever, you know me, I'm kind of a geek, and I do like to talk about data and science and things like that and try to make it interesting. So we're going to start out with a little bit of science to think about what is the context for the work that Project Trees has been doing for the last 5 years, and the context actually for everything all of you accomplished during the pandemic, because you worked so hard to make things even better. So it's a celebration of our work.
Marilyn, if I may, just very quickly, the handouts for today's sessions are on a Padlet, and I'm putting that link to the Padlet in the chat. So you click on that link, you'll be able to have access to the things that are covered today. And that's also where we will be posting the video after today's session. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Susan, for that reminder. There's great stuff on the Padlet, including a PDF of the slides from today and links to several resources that explain the framework that we've been using in Project Trees for the last, I think, 3 years now. So many of you have been familiar with Project Trees as we've made our journey in early intervention in Ohio, because we started out several years ago thinking about our work as how do our target, our charge from the Developmental Disabilities Council was really to think about how do we improve family support? How do we make it even better in our early intervention system in Ohio? And so we started out by, again, kind of being geeks and looking at all the research and looking at websites and thinking about what's been published. And we began by identifying our definition of what do we think about supporting families? What does the science say about the kinds of practices that make a difference? What can happen for families? And so we have used this definition. We ran it by you at leadership several years ago. So all of you are pretty familiar with our mission, our true north, that we're thinking about supporting families as beliefs and values and strategies and relationships, because we know what a difference early intervention can make when it uses practices that strengthen families, because we want them to leave early intervention with increased resilience, self-efficacy, well-being, and optimism. And thanks to Ronnie Boyer, because she always comes up with creative ways to put our words in order so that they kind of stick in your memory forever. So we're going to talk about 3 things today that have really influenced our journey for the last 5 years and the work of the teams that have been part of Project Trees. So we're going to start out very quickly again with some geeky stuff. All right, implementation science versus improvement science, because we've been seeing those words a lot. And then we're going to talk about the framework that we've been using in Project Trees. And again, we've introduced this framework through the OACB EI leadership get-togethers, and it's the framework that's been used by our teams that have been part of Project Trees. And I want to thank them, because our understanding of the ideas framework has gotten so much deeper because of our work with the teams and their work and what they've learned and what they've taught us. And so the third thing is they're going to share their work with you during the last half of this presentation. And so we're going to start out by thinking about, well, what is implementation science versus improvement science? And again, Diane was talking about, well, we're always adding acronyms and words. Nathan was talking about it. And so these are 2 more concepts that are really coming into play. Implementation science versus improvement science. And are they the same thing? Well, they're not. they're slightly different. So implementation science, and as you read the words on this page, and I'm not going to read them because they're very wordy, they're complicated, they're technical words, but that's also implementation science. So if we boil it down to what it really is, it's taking a practice or a model that has evidence to support it, but it's typically been developed, at a research setting or at a university, or a specific like Frank Porter Graham or whatever, a special center devoted to research and developing new models. And so, the goal of developing a new model or a new program or a new way of working with children and families, the goal is always to show evidence and then spread it, right? And so very interesting things happen when you have a model that's in this kind of pristine, developed in this pristine environment, and then you say, oh, we're going to take it to the real world of children and families and practitioners. And so that's what implementation science does. It takes a look at how do we move something that looks really good in a research setting? How do we move it into the real world? And what do we learn about that? How is it being implemented? Does it look consistently as good in the real world setting? What kind of support and technical assistance was provided to that real world setting? So that's implementation science. And it is very complex because it really takes a look at every single thing that could be affecting taking this model, this theoretical model with great outcomes, and putting it into the real world, the world that all of us experience every day. And so when I think back to this, you were part of implementation science. I would say probably 75% of the people that logged on today may have been part of our evaluation of the PLAY project several years ago, because we used an implementation science approach. Because here was, let me go on to the next slide. Here was the PLAY project model. It had great research to support it, that it made a significant difference in the lives of toddlers with autism, and especially preschoolers with autism and their families. And so the vision in Ohio that DODD had was, okay, this model works. How can we take that and put it into a community-based early intervention setting? And so again, we used implementation science to really think about, okay, how is that playing out in Ohio? Here's this great model, and as people are trained in Ohio and trying to implement it, what is that starting to look like? And again, thank you for all of you who probably we're in focus groups, you responded to surveys. You, again, are the people who made this implementation science project work. So just kind of a little stroll down history lane. What we've been told going into this implementation science project was really that many people, it was taking a while to move towards PLAY certification. There was frustration with the technology that was being used at the time to upload your videos and upload your reports. Sometimes the feedback was very slower than you needed to the consultants, from the supervisors to the consultants in training. It seemed like in some ways things were constantly changing. The training was a little different every time, the evaluation forms. There were also questions about, what is fidelity with PLAY? What does that look like? What's it going to look like here in Ohio? And then, of course, DODD was concerned about its return on investment, all right, because this was a big investment. This was a big dream. And so we approached this from an implementation science framework. So again, we looked at, and these are the critical factors in implementation science. First of all, you think about the model itself, the critical factors in the model. How clearly is it explained? Its components, what are parts and pieces of it? Is it going to fit into early intervention in Ohio? Do the people in training have enough time to be able to do the training and do the certification process? Are they receiving administrative support in their new setting? Are they able to do the work because they already had their early intervention work that was happening. Could these practices be sustained over time? And another thing that we looked at was the quality of the training and the ongoing technical assistance provided to you. And then the second factor we looked at was fidelity of the model. And the play project component, had many components. You had the visits, you had the videos, you had the forms, you had the assessment tools. So again, thinking about, well, when you move that from play project in Ann Arbor to early intervention system in Ohio, when you move it from a 3-hour monthly intervention, which is what the research was about, to a model in Ohio where typically we visit families once a week, once every other week, what components are critical? Do we need to do it just once a month? Can we break it down into shorter times? Do we need to do a video every time? So there are a lot of questions about that. And then the third thing that we took a look at was the difference between intervention, which is what you do in the play model, versus the implementation practices, which was the training, supervision, and technical support that you guys were needed and were asked to do. And that was a lot of work. So what was the quality? Because what we know is no matter how good a model is, if the training, the process of training and supporting and teaching people the model are weak, then the model isn't going to work. It's not going to make a difference. It's not going to have an impact for children and families. So again, this is just like a 5-second slide, but this is everything we looked at. So you can see implementation science looks at a lot of factors that are going to affect the adoption of a model into kind of the messy, unpredictable world of children and families. And so as a result of that, we came up with recommendations for the play project. And these would require a lot of work, especially around fidelity, the data collection, the supervision, the certification, which was a very intensive process. Is that realistic for a real system? And then, you guys talked about we need a new DVD because the DVD is pretty old explaining play to families. We came up with recommendations for jointly the play project and DODD to work together on. And again, getting back to this, is a 3-hour match once a month the best way? Is that really critical, or can we shorten it? And then also thinking about the tools. Which of those tools are really critical to strong outcomes for children and families? And then finally, we had some recommendations for DODD with regard to their return on investment and what it would take to make sure that that return was really great. So that's an example of implementation science. And I wanted to use that to say that that really is a big thing. That's a big undertaking. Improvement science is just a little bit different than that. Improvement science is really something narrower, and it's quicker and it's faster, and you get to look at your data as you make these changes. So I think actually Susan, when she put together the Padlet and talked about a description for today's session, really had the best description of what improvement science looked like in Project Trees, which is basically you want to make something better. Not the whole system, but here's a specific challenge, a specific thing we know we could improve. It could be a new tool, a new way of working, a new relationship, but we think we can make it better. So you come up with an idea, you test it, you gather data on it, you measure it as you go along, and you learn from it. You learn from it rapidly. And so I do like this second bullet point, because the focus of improvement science is narrower than implementation science, as it seeks to maximize the impact of lessons learned from a specific effort. And again, this last part is really has been the key to the work of our TREES teams. The intent to maximize local benefits from local solutions. All right. So when we think about it, when all of us are faced with, oh gosh, could we do this even better? All right, there's something wrong. Families aren't, we're not able to engage families, or we haven't heard from families, or families, we don't think they understand early intervention when they're coming in, or we really want them to leave and transition out feeling stronger, but families tell us they feel like baby birds pushed out of the nest. So there are lots of different aspects of early intervention that could lend themselves to improvement science. But for all of us, often what we want to do is solve the problem right away. So we come up with a challenge, and the traditional approach is, well, have you tried X or Y? Or maybe we should do this. We think this will work. And so then you put it into place, and then down the road you think, oh, we're not sure this is working. We're not sure. But we don't have any data to support it. It's just a feeling that it may not be working so well. Well, improvement science is a little bit different than that, because, and we'll talk more about it, what is the problem, or what is our challenge, or what are we trying to make even better? What is an idea about change? What change ideas might we think about, and why? How will we know if we implement this? How will we know if it's making an improvement? And so the traditional approach you see in the final bullet point on the left is you implement fast, but you learn really slow because you haven't really set up a way to learn anything about it. On the other hand, improvement science is you're learning all along the way. You're learning fast. You may be making tweaks as you go along because you want to implement well. So just a quick look at some key principles of improvement science before we get to talking about the specific approach that we used. First of all, and this is really, really important. And again, this is one way that it is different from implementation science. Make the work problem specific, so small, all right, but user-centered. So improvement science starts with a single question. What specifically is the problem we're trying to solve? And it typically means that we're going to work from the bottom up, because it's going to be the people on the team, the families, who are asking this question. And so it is really important in improvement science that everybody is on board. The team, families, anybody who is involved, anybody who has any role to play in this specific challenge. And so again, one of the key aspects of improvement science, and I love this last bullet point, and you will hear it from the TREES teams as they talk. Practitioners are the ones in the best position to test new ideas, to know what works and what doesn't. So improvement science is really done by the people on the ground. The second principle is variation is really important. And we'll talk a little bit more about this when we get to the Harvard's ideas framework. We don't focus only on what works. We want to know not only what works, but who's it working for and why is it working? And if it isn't working, for whom isn't working and why isn't it working? And you'll see that our teams had lots of discussions about that as they were developing their priorities for change. The third principle is being systems centered. And, as I was putting together this PowerPoint, I had to laugh because I think most of you who have toddlers or grandchildren who are toddlers will recognize Coco Melon. And especially, because I have a toddler grandson and he loves Coco Melon, and especially the solar system. Let's explore the awesome planets. We'll fly in our rocket ship. Let's explore the awesome planets. We'll have an exciting trip. And it goes on and on and on. But I thought, what a great analogy to think about. We have to understand what's going on when we're trying to do improvement science. We have to see the system. We have to take apart the system. What's happening now? So we have to sit back, not come up with a solution right away, but really think about it. What's happening? What's causing this? What factors? These, again, local conditions, because what's happening in one team, those factors may be different than in another team. And so then a key piece is developing a theory of change or a hypothesis for change. And so theory is easier to say, so we use theory of change. So thinking about it, what is it that we want to change? What strategies do we want to put into place? What do we think will happen if we put that into place? How will we measure it? And then what are the moderating variables? Again, could it be, and our teams will talk about that. For example, could it be related to the length of the length of time families have come and have been in the EI system? Or could it be related, and one of our teams looked at referral source in terms of family engagement and follow through and participation in team meetings? Then measurement is really key to this. And again, we're not talking about a huge research study, but what we do during the process of improvement science is really think about, well, if we test this idea, what do we hope will change and how can we measure it? And so again, we've learned from our teams, we've learned from the ideas framework that at least in our approach to improvement science, we've encouraged teams to keep the measures, what they're trying to measure, very specific, but simple and meaningful. So not a whole ton of data, all right, but something that's easy because the teams are participating in implementing the strategies and collecting the data and making sense of it. Then the fifth core principle is thinking about what they call disciplined inquiry. So again, this is where the data collection then leads to conversations about what is the data telling us. And in improvement science, you don't wait a year or two like we did in the play project evaluation. That took us more than a year to collect the data and come up with findings. Improvement science is different because it goes faster. You measure, you may be looking at your data regularly in team meetings, trying to figure out what it means. And again, failure is not the problem. We want people to learn fast, fail fast, and improve quickly. So the problem is failing to learn from the data. And then finally, the sixth principle in terms of improvement science is often teams will work together or communities will share their knowledge. Because again, we all believe, this is a key principle of early intervention and the ecological community-based approach we use, that we can accomplish more together and learn more together. And I will say, just on behalf of our trees consultant team, this took us a while to learn. And we learned this from their teams. And once we started connecting our teams more frequently, and we saw how they could learn from each other, that was an amazing experience, an exciting experience for us. So then when we think about it, okay, there are lots of ways to go about improvement science. Many of you may have heard of the PDSA model, Plan, Do, Study, Act. It was just great timing that we had the opportunity early on in Project Trees to learn more about the ideas framework from the Harvard Center on the Developing Child. And again, the Harvard Center on the Developing Child, we've posted, I think, 4 resources from that center on the Padlet. It has just amazing resources for you and for families just in general. So let's talk a little bit about that. And so again, we have some screenshots of slides that were used during our education, our training from the Harvard Center. So Jack Shonkoff is really the leader. He's a developmental pediatrician. He's at Harvard. People know him. People love him. He spent years working in early intervention. And so I'm sure it was his great idea behind this ideas framework. And so his challenge to those of us who were at the training was to think about, why do we need a more precise science-based approach in our field of early intervention? And so, when you take a look at the research, as Jack pointed out, although we have evidence-based practices, we really never know for whom, for which families, for which children is it specifically working, and for which families or for which children is it not working so well. And so again, he's suggesting that, well, okay, we've done that research about kind of these average outcomes. We need to dig a little deeper into what's really happening with specific practices and models. And so one of the examples that he uses is from medicine, thinking about the change in survival rate and pediatric in terms of treating acute lymphoblastic leukemia. And so again, in 1964, the survival rate was very, 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 very low, almost zero. But between 1999 and 2006, it was well above 90%. And that's because the field of medicine has really gotten good at improvement science. How can we make things even better? But what's happened, I think, in our field historically is that the research that comes out, even for these evidence-based models that we try to move to the field through implementation science, the data is all about the average. You know, we show that this is the level of outcomes that we see for children and families, and that's the red line. But if you would look at individual outcomes when you're kind of doing your data and your research, you see that individual children and families are all over the place. There may be children and families who are above the line. There may be children and families below the line, but we don't know why. And that's his challenge to us in improvement science. So what he challenges us to think about, what this ideas framework challenges us to think about, is what should we ask? Why did this work so well for the dots above the line? And why didn't it work for the dots below the line? And I think, you know, as we talk about this, I hope you're thinking, well, yeah, I do have some theories about that. You know, I have seen this in my practice, you know, every week. I've seen this happen with these children and families. I haven't been so successful with these other children and families. So what this really does, it's a quick, structured, but flexible approach to improvement science. And it helps us get off that red line and really think about, well, first of all, moving the red line upward, all right? But also thinking about the dots above and the dots below the red line. And again, IDEA stands for something. Innovate, develop your theory of change, evaluate it, adapt as you look at your data, and then expand, scale it up. And so our trees teams have developed some products that could very well be helpful to other teams across Ohio. But what is key in this framework is what we call a theory of change. So it's really this, and I'll show you an example. I think I have it next. Okay, here it is for Knox County and their latest priority. A theory of change really thinks about, first of all, what's your priority? And they really wanted to address and are working on how do we increase the usefulness and impact of the IFSP? Because they felt families weren't familiar with it, they weren't looking at it, they didn't necessarily know what was on it, even after they'd helped in writing it. So what the theory of change does, it takes your priority, and typically what we've started with are looking at our outcomes, targets, which are the short-term outcomes, and then outcomes, the long-term outcomes. How will this make things better for families and for the team? And then we start to think about the moderators, you know, what variables might affect, you know, whether the dots are below the line or above the red line. And so thinking about it, Knox identified one of their variables that they really want to think about is, you know, maybe how long a family has been in EI, you know, makes a difference in terms of their understanding the IFSP. So then we develop strategies and the team comes up with timelines and they begin their work. But what's important about this is what the IDEAS framework calls fast cycle iteration. So you implement, you measure, you look. You either continue to gather more data or you tweak it because your data is telling you that maybe we need to tweak this idea. You measure, you look at it, you tweak, and so on. So each cycle, each time you look at it, is an opportunity to refine what you're doing, learn from what you're doing and what's working and what's not, and then, you know, continue to gather data. So, so that's the scientific part of the study, you know, so I hope you're all still listening, because this is the exciting part. You know, these are all words on PowerPoint slides. But once you see the work that these teams have been doing, how they've embraced this model, the amount of effort that they've put into this model, and we hope that they see the impacts. We see the impacts. We hope they talk about the impacts that they've had, not only on families, but also on their work as early intervention teams. So just before we shift to talking from the teams, these are the current micro trial priorities that our current 7 teams have been working on. And they're going to go through their priority. We're going to move from Erie all the way over to Williams alphabetically. And they're going to tell you a little bit about the work in one area, one aspect of their work on their priority. And so you can see that some of them are working on the beginning of the EI process, you know, how to make that better for families. Some of them are working on the middle of the process, you know, in terms of IFSP or information for families. And then some of them have chosen to work at the end part of the EI process, transitioning out. How do we make that even better for families? And one of the things that we always post when we are introducing the ideas framework to new teams is just kind of some scribbles on a flip chart, more thoughts from Jack Shonkoff. In our field, we need more research and development. Wherever the field is going, we want to be there first. That was the challenge to our teams. We should be in relentless pursuit of even better outcomes. Constructive, loving dissatisfaction, all right, is not a weakness, it's a strength. There's no need to be defensive in this model. You know, it's like we can do even better. We think we can do even better. And then innovation is about risk taking and co-creation. Again, this is based in what the team is doing together. And then this last quote, which some people ascribe to Albert Einstein, some people mention it, some, you know, that someone else thought of it first and said it first. But if you always do what you always did, you will always get what you always got. And so again, that's our challenge. We do great work. Can we do it even better? So Susan, I'm going to stop my screen sharing. And Susan is going to open up our Padlet where the teams post their work. And I am going to introduce, first of all, we're going to start working from left to right. And so this is the Padlet where each of the teams has stored their theory of change, some examples of their work, products that they have developed, or surveys or measures that they are using to evaluate their micro trial. So Jen, Kenny from Erie, if you want to turn on your camera, I'm going to turn it over to you. And Erie has had a couple of micro trials. Their first micro trial was really about helping families understand better the beginning of early intervention, the role of service coordination, what was going to happen. And their current micro trial is thinking about exiting from early intervention and thinking about how do we use exit survey feedback from families to guide program improvement. So Jen, it's to you, and thank you.
Hey, you're a very hard act to follow, but I'm going to try.
No, I was the lead into you guys. This is like the whipped cream on top of the sundae.
Okay, well, I'll get started. Susan, if you would pull up, I'll start with the exit survey that we're currently in that micro trial. And so you can just kind of take a look at what we've developed. So the intent of our most recent micro trial here that you'll see is just to develop a very, very simple survey that is sent to all families who exit, whether that's a planned exit or an unplanned exit. And the intent is really to gauge whether or not families really feel like services are helpful to their family, and if they feel supported through the process, and kind of feel what we are hoping that they feel, which is supported through the entire process all the way to the end. So because it's a new initiative, we're just really now in the phase where we're gathering the data that Marilyn talked about. So, and we're really honing in on question number 8. If you don't, if you wouldn't mind to kind of scroll to 8. The areas, so the question is, which areas of your life have improved since participating in the Erie County Early Intervention Program? So we're kind of honing in on this question, looking at that data pretty frequently. So right now our data is slightly trending. Where the least checked item is my knowledge of how parenting can impact my child's development. So we're particularly interested in why that is and what it means and how we can increased that families feel that way about the services that they're getting. So, you know, we're just kind of in that monitoring phase, trying to figure out strategically what it means. But what we like about doing about these trials and gathering this data is figuring out how we can make small tweaks that will make big impacts later on. And so, so obviously with the Project Trees sort of focus, we're really focused on how families feel, you know, how they feel supported through the process. So that's kind of where we're at, and using that data will probably make some professional development sort of opportunities available for the team. I know it's going to change some of the conversations that are going to be had in supervision, and how do we want as a team to tackle this topic, and make sure that, you know, all of that information is moved on to the families. So so that's kind of where we're at, because we're really kind of in the thick of it with this survey, and really hope to make those changes to, you know, improve services, because overall that's the big picture, is improving the quality of services that we provide to every family. So that's our exit survey. That's kind of where we're at right now. And Susan, if you wouldn't mind to pull up our other product just to show. So this was the micro trial that we, or this is actually the product that ended, that was kind of the end result of our micro trial prior to the exit survey. And really the intent of this product, or creating this sort of literature brochure, is to make sure families feel on the front end of services that we are here for their family as a whole, and that we're just as focused on their family as they are their child, and those, and you know what those needs are. And so this was a product that was developed after lots of data collection on when to give it, how to present the information. You'll see on the right-hand side, we have discussion topics. So we wanted kind of a menu of services or kind of options that families could take a look at, and so that they would kind of know where would be a jumping off point to start that conversation with their service coordinator if there were needs that were unmet at that time. So after that micro trial and some of that data collection, we found that over 50% of our families were really more open with their service coordinator 60 days after their IFSP was completed, after they had developed a relationship and really got going with services. And that was a time where we were seeing that families were identifying those needs more frequently. We started off, you know, doing it at intake and 30 days after, and really found that that 60-day mark was kind of the sweet spot where families were really feeling comfortable enough to dig deep with their service coordinator. So this was the product that came from that micro trial. So I guess kind of in summation, we just kind of found that making really small changes and tweaks along the way as we looked at the data. And for this product, we were really looking at it, you know, almost weekly. We were talking to service coordinators and really kind of getting their feedback, and we had a way that we collected all of that data to take a look at. But we're just kind of finding that making those small changes really make a whole heck of a lot of difference when looking at, you know, being more family centered and all those things. So those are the two products that I'm here to share. So.
Thanks, Jen. And for that, we will save time at the end for questions. So if any of you have specific questions for any of the teams that are presenting or the products that they have developed, put those in the Q&A or in the chat, and we'll have time for those at the end. Thanks, Jen. That was great.
Great.
You guys really are the whipped cream on top of this sundae, and there's more to come. So Susie from Highland County. And Highland County, their current micro trial is thinking about how to increase family attendance, participation in quarterly team meetings. And this also was a topic in an early micro trial for Licking County. That was their first micro trial, and they experienced success in making some tweaks to what they were doing that families started participating significantly more often. So Susie, I see your camera's on, unmute, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, I wanted to just say thank you to the trees ladies. We've had the luxury of spending 4+ years with them. So like Jen said, this is kind of the last of our micro trials. We've tried several things, and it started out with interviewing the county of what our families wanted more of. And we found that our families wanted to feel more connected to each other, more connected to us. And our earlier trials were a lot about social settings and introducing them to each other. And with the pandemic, we tried something new the last 3 months. So this is just going to be like a short overview of some of the down to the implementation science or the idea science of what we're trying to address. We wanted to have families attend our team meetings more regularly. So how are we going to do that? Susan, we did a little, you can just highlight the introduction video. You don't have to play it, but we decided to, there we go. We were just kind of introducing the team so we wouldn't have to waste time on our meeting.
Welcome to Early Intervention. I'm Susie, the Early Childhood Director.
We would send this to families to invite them before they came to the meeting, and hopefully then when they came on, they wouldn't be scared by all of our faces on Zoom. They would know us ahead of time and kind of just get acquainted with that, and also the team process. It wasn't just their PSP, that they had access to all of us. So that was something that we sent. And then if you want to go over the little PowerPoint, this is going to kind of highlight what Marilyn was talking about with kind of the fast and furious. Try something with the data, and if it doesn't work, quickly try something else. So we sent out a video, we sent out a text. We want to kind of measure what kind of things work to invite families. The funny thing was, like she was saying, it has to be real. I'll just go over quickly what our team experienced. You know, we had everyone sending the data into one person, and there was a lot of reminding and things like, oh, that doesn't work. So let's make a shared drive, have everyone enter their own data into the shared drive, and we were still missing pieces. So again, it's a quick regrouping when the data doesn't work. And we found out at team meeting as families were coming in, then we just filled out a chart. Our moderator would fill out a chart, how the family was invited. Did they decline? Did they attend? Or did it just no show? So we just kind of produced, like I said, this was our last quick micro trial. And we just found out that the invites did work. And this is kind of data that we're going to keep taking. If you just want to progress through the slides, Susan. This also highlighted by provider. So we could kind of get tips from each PSP, how they invited their people and maybe what their script looked like. And if they wanted to share with the group, how they were getting people to participate not only once, but maybe on their next quarterly, and then develop more of a relationship. So we found this helpful. I think it makes sense that unlike Susan and Marilyn, data isn't my thing. I just want to celebrate. So this is especially helpful to me because it kind of gives me a framework to work with, and a good way for us to try out ideas and to measure what's working, and really just to encourage people and share within our own team and with the other teams, because we're super excited about working on all these ideas that we see here on the Padlet. So thank you.
Thank you, Susie. And I just want to reinforce Susie's point about data collection being easy and not solely the responsible of one person, to figure out a way how to keep everybody involved, because the measurement part is so important. And so again, I think each of our teams have addressed that challenge in very different ways. And so Renee has a question. And Susan, we can save all the chat and Q&A till the end. Is that right? And then really have our teams address that? Or do you want to do it as we go along? What do you think, Susan?
Just looking at the time, we've got 45 minutes, so I think we're okay. We could address some questions as we go.
Okay. Okay. Did anybody have questions for John? Because this one is a question for, well, actually for any of the team members. So, okay, so here for Susie, all right, so are your providers in-house or in other agencies is one question. And then I believe there was a question in the chat. There we go. How did you capture the data, show or no show? What computer program did you use? So Susie, do you mind addressing, first of all, what you use to capture the data? And maybe all of our teams as they talk can talk about how they captured the data. And then thinking about, are your like, do you have contract providers or?
It should be in the Padlet. There's a drop down sheet. I think it's down below. There we go.
Oh, not that
one.
So you guys used Excel, right? I think.
Yeah. And then kind of just drop down of, you know, how they invited, who invited, with video, without. So that kind of they should be able to access and utilize that. So that would be good. And then yes, all of our providers are, I guess you would say, within house. That's taken on a new meaning in the last year and a half. We do short from our physical therapist. He is shared with preschool, that he's mostly just contracted as needed, but everyone else is within the county.
Okay. Jen, if you wouldn't mind popping back on, where do you, because you use a different approach to your data, because you have a different system.
Yeah, so for our brochure, when we tracked that data, it was not fancy. We used Excel and we just tracked our data manually and looked at it in that way. For our survey, we use Microsoft Forms, and that data is collected for us as families fill out the forms, and nice pie charts and graphs come out on the other end, and we're able to look at that data as much as we want. We could look at it daily. So using that platform really helps for that process.
And Jen, if you could also describe why Microsoft over like Google Forms, which some other teams have used. Why did you guys go with Microsoft?
Because we take the lead from our IT is the real answer. The compatibility of Microsoft Forms at our agency was what we were used to here. So we use that platform. And then in order to get technical assistance from our IT, he was more comfortable using that platform. The platforms are almost identical, Google Forms to Microsoft Forms. I actually can't even see a difference other than the way it kind of looks, but the information that comes out on the end is the exact same.
Okay, thanks, Jen. Thanks, Susie. Okay.
Well, one other question was about the products that we're producing, and if they will be available to access. And do you want to answer that?
No, go ahead, Susan. I'm going to grab some water.
Okay, where we are with sharing the products, yes, they will be available to share. Some of the products are still in testing phase. And so we won't release them until the counties have decided, okay, they're done, they're as good as they can be, and we're ready to release. We will be scaling, and that's an integral part of this process. So yes, we will not, we need to wait for them to give us the okay to do that.
Okay, thank you. So 2 teams. Now our 3rd team is Knox, and I'm going to turn it over to Brenda. And their priority at this point in time, their current micro trial, again, is thinking about the usefulness and the impact of the IFSP. And we showed their theory of change. And so they have really had an interesting journey, and they really have put to test, we need to make changes as we go along. We're looking at the data and we're going to make some changes. So Brenda, it's to you.
Yes, thank you. So yes, we wanted to focus on the IFSP and the usefulness of it for families. You know, did they find it helpful? How often were they looking at it? What parts did they look at, or were they even looking at it? And so as a team, we came up with a list of 5 questions, and we wanted to make it simple. The questions were asked by the service coordinators, and they were asked at every IFSP review and every annual REDED or annual IFSP. And so they were asked by the service coordinator. And again, they're just simple questions. You know, did you find any of the strategies helpful? Did you share the strategies with anyone or the IFSP? And what we found was that they were not looking at the IFSP. We had a few that, skimmed it, but they really were not sharing it with others. They were able to tell us some strategies, though, that we found helpful that we thought we could share with other families. And so the second half of the year, we decided to switch gears. And so if families were not looking at the IFSP, did they at least feel comfortable with the process? Did they understand the purpose of the document? And so we created new questions. However, the results, it did not take us long to realize that we weren't really capturing what we wanted. Susan, if you want to look at the responses, it was very skewed. Of course, all families were comfortable. They answered that they were comfortable with the process. Did they understand the IFSP? 100%. They said they understood it. And so, families, of course, want to please us. They want us to be happy. So, it just really wasn't capturing. And if you scroll on down, we asked, other routines. And so we're seeing a pattern here. We use them in all routines. So it really wasn't narrowing it down. It wasn't giving us the data that we wanted. So we changed again. But this time we really looked at our processes and how we could ensure families were looking at their IFSP. And the way that we could do that is that we now have our PSPs bringing a physical copy to homes to share with families, or virtually if they're doing a virtual visit. And so at those visits, they might point out, on page 3, you can find your outcomes. And these are some of the strategies that we're working on. Or page 1 has your demographics. So they're sharing bits and pieces of the IFSP during visits. So it will really make the questions we tweaked again more relevant to the document. And I see that it could definitely be an ongoing practice from here on out, best practice. So at least we know that families are looking at their IFSP. We have talked to them about it, and hopefully it will make them feel more comfortable as they move into preschool if their child, has an IEP. So hopefully giving families a better understanding of the document.
And Brenda, what were you using Google Forms?
We
What are you-
were,
Okay,
yes,
so you,
Google Forms.
okay. And then there was a comment in the chat oops. Let me go back to the chat, sorry. That I know we love our awesome reports. Both the IFSP and the Play Project VRF are pretty long. And again, you know, here's another EI person saying, yeah, you know, we do need to pull out the essential parts as a takeaway portion, such as the outcomes and strategies that we want to be implemented. So it seems like, Brenda, you guys have been addressing a challenge that many people across the state may be experiencing. We invest a lot of work in the IFSP and we hope that families will use it, but are they?
Right. Right. And this way we can ensure it. And I think not only is it going to be better for families, but help providers understand it as well.
And then even thinking about it, back to Erie's point about what families are saying, you know, that they're, you know, how my parenting, you know, they're not checking the box about, I understand how my parenting impacts. Well, maybe thinking about addressing the strategies on the IFSP can also link to helping families understand the role they play in terms of their child's development. So
yes,
all these connections as we're sharing information. Anything else, Brenda?
No, that's all I have.
Okay, and Susan, I didn't see any other comments or questions for Brenda.
No.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. So we're on to Beth from Licking. And Licking has a very unique current micro trial. And their first micro trial was similar to Highlands. Current micro trial. Licking really focused initially in their first go round of micro trials on how to increase family participation in team meetings. And so now they're tackling something else. They're thinking about the middle part. Like Knox's, they're thinking about the middle part of the early intervention experience for families. And so they really want to focus on how do we, they're concerned that families are not getting enough developmental information, you know, so how do we enhance access to and expand methods of sharing information with our families? So Beth, is your camera on and you're unmuted, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Marilyn. Yeah, so we in Licking County have always been somewhat technology forward. So we knew we wanted to use technology as a mechanism to make sure our families were getting crossover services. So support not just when we're physically in the home. So to go about that, we kind of wanted to see where families were living technology-wise. You know, we have a very age variant team. So some of us older people are like, well, everyone's on Facebook. And some of the younger people are like, what's Facebook? So we thought that we probably should ask our parents, where do you go on the internet? Why do you go there? What do you go there for? Instead of us just thinking that we knew what parents would need or want and creating that that information for them. So we did a survey. So I don't know, Susan, if you want to show the survey. The survey was a little bit longer survey. And this survey also was for our entire early childhood department. So we have our trees goal, but our trees goal also overlaps into an agency-wide goal about getting information to families. So for our early childhood department, it's birth to 13. So some of these questions were posed not just to our early intervention families. We were able to aggregate the data to find out just what those answers were, but we did ask our entire demographic for that. So I was kind of right. They do go to Facebook. So either that means our parents are older or our younger parents maybe didn't answer the survey, but that's data we can maybe find in a different way. So they are using Facebook. They are using YouTube. They are going to those sites for child development information, for health and wellness information. So a lot of our assumptions, you know, our data hypothesis was right of what we kind of thought parents were using the internet for in regards to their child's development and wellness. So you were on the right path. Some of the things we did learn from it is that they're not following our social media sites. As Susan pulls it up, great timing, big fat no. So, that poses a bigger problem that isn't really a trees thing per se, but something that we will work on. And when I talk a little bit about our current project, we have kind of implemented a way that might help people get to where they need to go. We wanted to make sure that they were following us and having access to what we're giving them. Our goal really isn't just a acute option for information. We want it to be something that's tangible and returnable for them, that they go back to, or that they send to grandma or to the daycare provider or something like that. So we want to make sure parents are able to path to the stuff that we're creating. So we can go ahead and kind of go through the survey. The survey is a lot of stuff that we would kind of expect. Like if you're not following us, why not? If you didn't know about things, why not? And a lot of the answers were just like, we just didn't know. So we do have a job to do there of getting the information out. During the pandemic, we weren't doing home visits and we had some free time. So we created activity bags that we gave our families. And with those activity bags, we created videos that went with them. The videos were spoken videos. And one of the things, if you're not familiar with Licking County, one of the things about our client demographic is we have a lot of Nepali families or non-English speaking families. So that wasn't really talked about in the survey, but it is definitely a need that we're aware of, that some of the videos that we're creating are completely pointless to some of our families because they don't understand it, or they can't get captioning to make it valuable to them. So we are doing a new series of activity boxes that have manipulatives in them. And we have decided to kind of go a little bit rogue and do this without data. I apologize, Marilyn. We will get data on the back end, I promise. But instead of doing a talk at you video, so if you want to pull the video up, I don't know if you want to run it if it can run in the background while I talk. So instead of a talk at you video, we did what everyone on YouTube is doing. We did an unboxing. So my kids and one of our service coordinators' kids came in, and this is the activity box that families will be able to get. And it's literally just our kids showing them what to do. And we figured that with it being kids doing it, that might interest the younger kids to pay attention, and that this wouldn't just be a parent education, but it could be a family activity that, the parents and the child can sit down and watch the kids play with things. Those of you who have young kids, my kids are 5 and 8, they really like to watch other kids play. Like they don't want to play with it. They want to watch the other kids play with it. So we're kind of hoping that this might hit that demographic, but also give parents an opportunity to not really have to think, not have to listen, not have to rely on us speaking the language and them just watching. So we have a kit for the a little bit older kids with manipulatives. And then here in a second, you'll see the real star of the show, who is Kaylee McLean's son, Dempsey. She had a baby perfect timing for this, that we had our own little star to do our baby mat. So this will help parents hopefully know kind of what to do with these things. Our team just recently went through care training. Thanks, Susan. I mean, they're cute and all, but let's speed it up and show the baby, because that's really what we're here for, right? We went through care training with our ACMH provider. So our next video is potentially going to be a communication-based video of us playing with our kids, but using care techniques. So I love how you're smushing that with your hands. Big pink ball, those kinds of things, to kind of help parents learn how to use some of those skills in the home. We're also going to do some post surveys looking at competence and confidence, since that's the backbone of EI. Doing this with your kid, do you feel more confident? Do you feel more competent in ways to play with your child? So that's kind of where we are. We are using our ARPA money to get better quality stuff, to make better quality videos, because we do want to give parents, we want to give them what they need, but we also want to give them quality product as well.
So Beth, there were a couple comments in chat. Admiration for what you guys are developing and the creative ideas that you have. So, so I love this. I love that idea. Fun. So people are really intrigued by what you're developing. And again, people may question, oh, can we have access to those products as well? So Lots of great comments. Can you follow them? I don't know if you can follow the chat. So
it's, yeah, I see it popping up, but I
okay,
haven't been
all
able to
right.
see everything.
And so also I loved also what you said, and which is one of the strengths of this approach, this ideas framework. It's like, well, we had the data to confirm what we thought we knew. So that's really important part of this improvement science is lots of times we base decisions on what we think, but this really helps us base decisions on what we know to be true, not just our opinions or, you know, differing opinions or who has the strongest opinions. It's based on now what we know. So again, anything else, Beth, that you want to add?
Oh, the video will be linked to a QR code that will be on the label that's on the box. So the families don't have to do anything extra. They literally can take the box, click the QR code, and go directly to instructions on how to use it.
Okay. And so Beth, what program did you use again to develop the videos?
We just used our promotion person's DSLR camera and then iMovie.
iMovie? Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know much about the QR codes, but it's literally a website that our PR person uses that you put the link in and it spits it out for you. So it's pretty user friendly.
Well, when we get to Williams County, they have had, you know,
well, and that's where we stole the idea from.
Yeah,
yes. So thank you, Williams County, for that.
So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I would just like to comment on how this information from the survey directly apply to what you're doing right now, Beth. Because what they're saying is that they will pay attention to things that are being introduced to them by their primary providers. And so by doing this activity and QR code, making accessible, it's great. Great example of using the data.
Mm-hmm. And Susan, that is, I think what all the teams have experienced, you know, the power of the relationship that providers, service coordinators have with their families, the personalized invitation to the team meetings. So I think every single team has incorporated that concept of how do we use the relationship to, you know, make improvements. So, okay, on to Miami. And Miami, and Kathy, if you want to, yeah, and you probably already have, show us your camera. So Miami has, again, are addressing the end, the exiting process out of early intervention. And so they are doing some very creative work, thinking about using materials from charting the life course and what difference might that make in helping families be more confident in the choices that they make around transition. So Kathy?
Morning, everybody. And just like everyone else, thank you all for letting us be part of TREES the past 5 years. It has been a journey that we have enjoyed and learned a lot from. So we really wanted to know if all of our families felt supported, knew their options, and had the resources when they left early intervention. So when families go from Part C to Part B, they have kind of like this plan in place, but what if they don't? And are those families okay, or are they not? And we didn't know. So we chose to use the Life Course Tools trajectory. And if Susan would pull that up for us, it's the second, yep. And we did that because the trajectory is something that our SSA department is already using. So if our children choose to go to Part B services and they choose a 3 to 5 SSA, she will be using this tool with them. We also chose it because many of us have seen it, have been trained on it prior to. It's a tool I have used both with staff development and program planning. And we felt it would be a nice, rich way to guide the conversation with families about what they want and what they don't want when their child turns 3. We were trained by 2 Life Course tool ambassadors. One was Ronnie Boyer from Project Trees, and the other was a children's SSA from our county. So that was just a really nice fit. And both of them are not only professionals in the field, but they're also parents of children who were in early intervention and transition to preschool services. So we started this process in June. And of course, during the summer, we don't have a lot of transitions with our children because our preschools really bunch everybody up really tight in the spring so they can have their time off in the summer. So we started it in June and we did the trajectory during our transition planning home visit with families with the service coordinator and the primary service provider. So this was completed with families. And then after they go through the whole process of transition, 2 months after the child exits, the primary calls the family, checks in with them, and sends them a link for our survey. And we chose to do that, one, because as people who have spent sometimes many, many months with these children and families, we wonder how they're doing. So it's a nice way for staff to check in with our families. And it's also a nice way for families to say, oh my gosh, this is what's been happening. So it was really a two-way street with that. And our survey is kind of a dual purpose. One, we have always sent out an exit survey by mail to our families. And so we incorporated that piece. But the other part of it was, did you do a trajectory? Because we did send this out to families prior to starting the trajectory to get a baseline of whether or not they felt supported when they left. So is there a difference in using their trajectory and not? So it was twofold, our regular exit survey, and then did the trajectory impact your transition out of early intervention? And how did you feel about that? Which I think sometimes, you know, we focus a lot on the where we're going and not the journey of how the family and child are getting there. So I really wanted to know how the families are feeling through that process, because it's hard. It's hard on staff, and we've heard through the surveys that we did in Project Trees how families feel like they were pushed off a cliff at transition. So we really wanted to make sure they were supported. So right now we've really been in the thick of it for about a month because we've just had more families transitioning right now. So we are still gathering data, still working through some things. Next week, we're meeting again with Patrick, our Life Course Tools Ambassador, to relook at the trajectory a little bit. We're finding some things that for our 2-year-olds, maybe all those boxes on the trajectory, do we really, are they all needed? Can we eliminate some? What can we do with that? So that will be a possible tweak we'll be making next week.
So, Kathy, you had a couple of comments about people having the same idea about using the trajectory at transition. So I think everybody will be really interested in finding out what you discover in terms of its helpfulness.
We will be happy to share.
And anything else people want to ask Kathy? So, you know, it's interesting. And I'm going to say, Susan, do you want to circle back to the discussion that came out of Licking's presentation, or do you want to finish and then circle back around at the end? What do you think?
I think we'd better keep moving.
Okay. All right. So we'll wait and circle around at the end. Yes. So thanks, Kathy. Kathy, thanks, Miami. We're so excited. And you know, just about, again, trying something new, you know, to make things better for families. So Scioto is our newest team in Trees. They joined us, gosh, Erica, wasn't all that long ago. It feels like maybe a year ago. So Erica is presenting. Erica Wallace is going to represent the work of the SIOTA team. And they're a fairly brand new team. Just even before trees, they have many new team members. And so they have focused on the beginning, the entry into early intervention, and how to make that better for their families. So Erica, it's your turn.
Okay, hello everyone. I, like Marilyn was just saying, we are the newest team. First off, I just want to say that our team has been so thankful to be a part of Project Trees. It has been a wonderful opportunity for all of us, and we have really appreciated this time that we've been able to work with the team over this past year. Like Marilyn was saying, we are the newest team, but we decided to dive in pretty deep. We had 3 different projects that we wanted to work on. As you'll hear and see, we don't have a lot of data yet because we just launched it probably over the last month or so. So we won't really get that back probably for the first 6 or 8 months or so. But our micro trial was to develop a simple visual message for families that we serve so they could easily understand the process and the roles of the family in EI. Our team created a PowerPoint, an at-a-glance sheet, and a survey for our families to help us learn what we could do better at and to help enhance our services in different areas. Right here, Susan has pulled up our PowerPoint, and here we included pics of our team members. We really wanted to make this kind of eye-catching. We wanted to make it bright. We wanted to make it user-friendly, and like I said, just very simple. We also shared different pictures of the IFSP and forms that they'll see throughout the process. Because we felt like putting those forms on there will give them kind of idea where we're at, and they've seen that before, and kind of what to expect during each meeting throughout the process of EI. We also provided a pic of our team members doing our virtual core team meeting to kind of give an idea about what that looks like as well. The PowerPoint was probably our largest project that we did, probably the most time intensive. What our team did was split into 3 different groups. And so we had a PowerPoint team, an at-a-glance team, and then our survey team. And then we would come back together every couple weeks as a team and talk about what we were working on. And then some helped in different areas. My favorite part, I have to say, of the micro trials that we did was we had a focus group for families. So we had 2 different groups. We had one in person, and then we had one virtual. I have to say that the in-person visit was definitely the most successful. I was very impressed at the amount of feedback that we received from the families. It was very, very impressive. I mean, we received, I would say, at least 3 pages of notes of things that we could do. The families were very engaged. It was just wonderful to see that kind of level of feedback and really understanding from those families. So we took that feedback, met again as a team, and kind of incorporated that where we felt was needed. We had 5 families participate in those focus groups. Like I said, both virtual and in person. So if we want to share the at-a-glance next to Susan, thank you. So this at-a-glance is kind of like just like I said, we wanted to make it very colorful, very eye-catching. It's the a roadmap per se about what is happening at different times throughout the EI process. So we wanted kind of a cheat sheet to hand to families to kind of put on their fridge. We laminated these and kind of put the service coordinator, the provider, just to have kind of a one-stop shop that they can go to see and know what meeting is coming up, where they're at in the process, and where to look forward next. So in my mind, I kind of see it as a small social story, but for our families. And as you'll see on right below it, on the back side of our at a glance sheet, we have created a QR code. And that QR code is for the feedback for the survey that our team created. And we really just went for a really short 10-question survey to send to families. We are giving this to families at the TRS meeting and then again at our annual redetermination. And that was to see where they're at. Our data will be where we feel like they started out as far as understanding the process, and then they're seeing where they are at again a year later. So that is where our team is at. I felt that another favorite part of this whole process too was, instead of it being more of a task for our team, I felt like during this chaotic and busy time for everyone, of course, through the pandemic that we all have been going through, it was more of a team building activity for our folks rather than, like I said, just an extra task. So I'm very thankful and feel very blessed with how hard our team worked on this. So anyway, I don't have a lot of data just yet, but that will be to come.
Erica, first of all, people loved it. And secondly, someone asked, because you talked about bringing your team up into 3 groups, and they asked, well, how many people are on your team?
Well, we have 6 DSs, 2 service coordinators, an OT, a PT, and a speech. So yes, we have several team members and the whole team participated. So, and we even had, it wasn't necessarily like I was saying, we let them volunteer what they wanted to go on. And then I just jumped between the groups and helped facilitate. So everybody really helped in every area and kind of pitched in where we could. And then we also, as we got going, realized that the PowerPoint was kind of a lot because initially we had, when you're in EI, it's like, how do you explain all of this in simple terms? Like, you don't want to leave anything out. So we found that initially we kind of overthought it and we had a little bit too much information. So then we kind of broke it down a little bit more, kind of put some bullet points in there and kind of helped the PowerPoint team out as far as giving them a little bit more support, because that was the more time intensive project out of all 3. So.
Thank you, Erica. And I think, SIOTA is really shows you that improvement science belongs to the people on the ground. It's not something imposed by outsiders like us. It's not imposed. It's really people on the ground wanting to do it better, and they have invested their time. But again, we have encouraged them to keep the measurement simple and doable so that they can, learn from what they're doing. So SIOTA, again, just thinking about how much you've accomplished in just such a very short amount of time with new team members. So thanks, Erica. And I'm sure people are going to want your roadmap.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So, okay, finally, we move to Dennis and Williams County. And Dennis, I don't know if you want to talk about both your micro trials or just your last one, because again, Williams started at the beginning and actually developed something similar, roadmap at the beginning. That was their first micro trial. And now they are at their thinking about the end of the process. Make transition out of EI more family friendly and comfortable for all families. And like all the teams, one key aspect I think of improvement science is that you have to spend a lot of the time at the beginning thinking again about taking it apart. What's happening now? What could make it better? What difference would it make if we could implement this change idea, and then how would we measure it? So Dennis, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Marilyn. Like the other teams have said, we have really enjoyed our time with trees. We found it to be very beneficial, and it's really changed our team over the last 5 years. So thank you for that opportunity. This past year, our team was talking and we talked about how some of our families were expressing how they're not comfortable with the transition process and how it can cause anxiety. And so we began exploring different ways as a team of what we could do to make that a little better process for our families. And so we decided to develop a transition video. It doesn't take the place of what the service coordinators do as far as explaining transition. It's just another avenue of sharing information with families. And so it's a visual and verbal video. We do also have a post survey once they watch the transition video. And we found that 100% of our families say that they understood the transition process better after watching our video, and 100% of them recommend that other families would watch the video as well. And so we feel like it's fairly successful. Again, it's just fairly quick and simple, and it's a good way to reinforce what the service coordinators are also sharing with the families. So this is part of the video that that we're playing right now. And then after that, we have the survey. Our other micro trials that we've done is we really wanted our families to begin participating with our team meetings. And we thought that was important for families to be able to understand how big of a role they play. And so when we started in 2017, I'm a little bit like Marilyn. And so we pulled up the data and we had 1% of our families participating in our team meetings. And that was in 2017. And so I just pulled up our recent data for families participating in team meetings. And now we have 63% of our new families participating in our team meetings. We have 50% of our families who are receiving coaching are participating, and 35% of our families whose children are in the quarterly update section are participating in our meetings. And it was just a small tweak that we worked on, and Marilyn helped us with that, as well as Susan. And all we did was rather than having families opt in to participate in our team meetings, we have families opt out. And so we express how important it is for them to participate and how much we want them to participate, what their role might be. And then from there, we have them say no if they don't want to participate, rather than saying yes, they will. So that was a little change, and it had a big difference. So we went from 1% to 63% in 5 years. And one other change that we made, and we didn't really collect data on this, but we have the home visit form, which I'm sure a lot of you have, and we adapted it from Sheldon and Rush. And we just added one line up at the top called Family News, and it really helped us shift from a child focused program to more of a family focused program by adding that one line. And so on that line, we record things that are happening in the family. Maybe dad's looking for a job, or a sibling who's playing baseball during the summer. And it just helps us to remember to go back the next visit and revisit that topic with the family. And also helps us to include everyone and not just the child, so we can focus on everyone in the family and make sure everyone's doing well.
So Dennis, I'm sure someone is going to ask, what program did you use because you created the video? You did it yourselves. So what program did you use?
Correct. We did it ourselves. We used Doodly. And then we had a woman from our community came in and did the voice part of the video. So we created the video, and then she came in and recorded the voice.
Okay. And you also introduced to all of us the use of the QR code.
Correct. Once we start, well, we're doing some in-person visits, but before we were doing virtual, so the QR code wasn't that helpful. But now that we're doing in-person visits, we have the video and the survey all on a QR code. So our service coordinators can take out a little card with them, and then they show that to the families, and they can snap it with their phones, their smartphones or tablets, and then they'll play the video and take them to the survey.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dennis. Oh my gosh, it's like, that is just amazing work. And I think people are really excited by what you shared, the products that you have developed, how every team member was involved. You measured, you created simple measures, and you saw the difference that it really made, and in terms of improving your practice. Before we close, I do want to circle back because there were questions and good comments and good conversation that I wish we had time to continue even more with Licking's improvement science project, their ideas project, and talking about, because we all have been really trained to think about, we need to use the materials that families have in their homes to build their confidence and competence. And so there was a question about, using ideas like this, and what difference would that make? And I probably lots of people had that question, and I really like the comment, and I have to go back and who came up with the idea that, improvement science, we can measure this, will this, does this idea of just dropping off some simple materials for families to keep and some ideas about it? And Beth, I don't want, I don't know if you want to talk about what triggered that, how you guys even got started, but I think the improvement science can answer that question. Does something simple like that, does that undermine family confidence, or does it enhance family competence and competence? So Beth, I don't know if you want to say anything. We are getting close to being out of time.
Yeah, I think just real quick, we were one of the first counties to implement evidence-based early intervention. So we're kind of like the OG of EI, evidence-based EI. So I feel like we've always been try to be very fidelitous to it. And that was a conversation that was had. I think not that we're trying to manipulate it to make it work for us, because we really like the idea of the little boxes, but that it isn't a tool that's being taken to every family and given as, we're here today, here's our joint plan, and here's the box that you have to use with it. These are actually an RSVP method. So families, we have 50 of the boxes and 25 of the bags. So families have to ask for them. And we're looking at them more as a seasonal gift, a seasonal activity. And again, that just may be my interpretation because I like the idea. So you feel free to call me on that, other counties. Feel free to tell me that I'm interpreting it in a way to benefit our team. But I kind of felt like it didn't violate the EIVI rules when it is looked at as a moment in time kind of activity, and not an expectation of this is how every visit is going to go with your PSP. And it isn't a thing where here's this box, now we have to make our Tuesday at 2:00 visit fit what's in this box. This box is just something for you to do in your free time with your child that is more about love language and more about bonding time, and more about just spending time with your child in the time that they are, and not about your child's development per se, that just happens to have some developmental support along with it. So, I mean, I feel like that, not that we're justifying our position, but we did have that conversation, and that was a concern, because I don't want to go against what we are here for. So that was kind of our mentality behind it.
Okay. Yeah, and so, in listening to you, your point about, families request it, that is putting decision-making into the hands of families. So they have this option of asking for, yeah, that sounds like a really fun thing to do. I'd love that. So.
Yeah, and obviously if the PSP is there and the family has it and they're like, so what do I do with this? The PSP can use their time there for it, but that isn't going to take place of a joint plan or an activity that the parents had planned around what their priorities are.
Okay. Thank you. We are closing in. Susan, I can go back and show 2 more slides if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. I just want to thank our teams because they have done incredible work. Here we go, share. So, oh, I don't want that one to share. I want to go back to my slideshow. So while I'm trying to recreate my slideshow here, I'll just go back here. Scroll down. So It's Susan, I am having technical difficulties. So we're going to forget those last two slides. But basically what they talk about is just summarizing this process, that the early intervention, the ideas framework is really a very structured, but I don't want to say simple, but clear and simple approach to thinking about how can we make it better. And we don't test things for years and years and years. We learn from our data very quickly and we make adaptations, and it leads to some amazing products. And I want to thank our teams because they are the ones who have made this go from this conceptual idea of an ideas improvement science framework, and they have made it real and have just blown us away. And so we thank them for their work with Project Trees, and just they took advantage of this opportunity to make things even better. And you can see that it's paid off for them. They have just, they are shining examples of what early intervention can do. And it's something to celebrate, like we're celebrating everything in early intervention today. So Project Trees teams, we're celebrating you at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. The amount that we have learned in working with you all has been immense and life-changing for all of us. So, yes, we thank you so very, very much. Okay, so we are at 12:01. We are wrapping up our first session of the day. And I've shared the Padlet access to handouts. I also accidentally shared the Padlet access to our micro trials. And so while you can look at it, we do ask that you not download stuff until we've given final approval for things to be downloaded. The Padlet access to the handouts, though, you should be able to download the handouts from this morning and also in preparation for this afternoon. The final session, especially with Dana Childress, those handouts she was hoping that you all would have access to during her presentation. So have a nice lunch. We look forward to seeing you back at 1 o'clock for our next session on